Okay, everybody, welcome to Ham Talk. Okay,
Welcome.
We're missing Samantha. So I'm trying to do my best imitation of her. So welcome, everybody. And over here we have, oh, I'm sorry, you're over here tonight. Andrea.
Andrea, K2EZ.
And down below we have
Melissa, KI5ICQ.
And up here in this corner, we have Greg and 5XO. All right. I think I've done a good imitation of Sam. What do you think? Oh, wait a minute. No, got to welcome Fred. And this is Fred. Okay. I think we've covered Samantha tonight. Anyway, welcome to the show. Sam's traveling right now, so she is not able to join us. Her presence is greatly missed, not by me because I'm not getting insulted tonight. But
so you think?
Oh, I think, huh? On that. Well, tonight we got a couple of really fun things. Melissa has a really big surprise for us all. Melissa?
Well, from our most worthy and beloved viewer and fan, we have the hamshack of Mike McDonald, KM5BOR.
Finally, it only took a year, but we got him. So we'll be looking at that tonight. Andrea, you're going to be doing a segment on?
I'm doing a segment on grounds tonight.
Okay.
This will be part one of a two-part series on grounds.
Grounds, coffee grounds, what kind of grounds?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I saw a cute picture that was hanging on a bulletin board in there, and it said grounds, and it had a green wire about this long, and ran into a plastic bag of dirt. I guess it was the ground.
Whatever works.
Right.
On that. We also have a short segment from Raisa. So why don't we just roll into that right now?
Always run as little power as necessary.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Raisa. That was great. And I like her little shorts. They're cute and to the point. All right. Well, Melissa, because it's a special occasion, we're going to go ahead and roll right in with you for Mike. So
all right, here we go.
Away.
Yeah. Mike McDonald is an on-air name for commercial radio DJ Michael Rutherford, KM5BOR. We start out by viewing Mike's messy desk. He has several radios, an ICOM 7100 used mainly for digital, WinLink, etc., and a New Year's radio, the Yaesu FTDX10, a Yaesu FTM 400DR for 2-meter repeaters, and an older FTDX 3000 that he's looking to find a place for. There are 2 power supplies, an Astron, the other is a Yaesu, and he also has an amplifier that he rarely uses, an Ameritron 800-watt amp. Mike has a pass-through whole house generator that can run his shack for a month on propane. Here we show 2 of his radios on. He says, "Gotta love our wireless hobby. I have 2 Anderson power pole fuse blocks to run my shack." This is an MFJ cobweb on a small 30-something foot hand crank up and tilt over tower on a trailer. You can see his diamond 2-meter antenna in the back. The bottom of the tilt over crank up with MFJ cobweb, you can see the 2-meter diamond antenna in the background. This is what he's using currently until he can get the big tower online. Check this out. This is a large steel square beam with a large truck winch attached to it. This lifts up the large 72-foot tilt-over tower. You can see his 2 large propane tanks that run the Generac whole house generator. And here's the 72-foot tilt-over tower. It's going to be pretty loaded down. A 2-meter J-pole, 2-meter Cushcraft beam that is something crazy like 17 dB of gain or more, a 6-meter beam, a large HF beam by E Antennas will do all the HF, and a Yaesu rotator. And lastly, we have an HF beam for 4010 by E Antennas. Mike says he thinks the model number is a Mini 6B. And that'll wrap up our Show Us Your Shack segment. And thanks to KM5BOR.
All right, well, thanks. Mike, you need a maid. I thought my shack was bad.
He admitted it was kind of messy. So
hey, I am just happy that after a year we managed to get him pressured enough, blackmailed and everything into doing that. We were going to sick Fred on him.
I just want to point out you have not seen my shack. So
I've seen your mobile shack, and
well, the
cars, really.
Yeah. See, the car doesn't accumulate unnecessary things, unlike the shack at home, which unfortunately right now I have no antennas. So
what?
There's a lot of that going on.
I've hardly been there in the past 3 years. 2, one of the things I had most of them at the permission of my neighbor in the lot next door, but the neighbor sold the lot and the house has gotten built. And 3, there's apparently some very voracious climbing plants, and in the period of like 2 years, they climbed up my coaxes, totally grabbed my antennas, and went beyond the coax to the support ropes and tangled up in the tree. So now I can't even loosen the rope down to get the antenna down off the pulley.
Yeah, they're locked in pretty tight. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it is. And I mean that pulley's up about 70, no, not 70, but a good 60 feet. And getting another line on that is going to be fun, especially since what's there I can't get down to clean it up. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, to be honest.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I have no antennas on my truck right now, which was my primary source for operating when I go to and from work. That's a story for another day. And I am ready to put my antennas up, but I am not able by myself to lift the mast up in the thrust bearing, slide it up so that Ruth can slide the rotor into the plate. So I'm going to go get me a strap and a come along so I can hoist the antenna up a couple feet to.
You don't want to have another antenna party?
No, because by the time I get somebody up there to pull, heft, and 2 other people to do it, it's just easier to go pick up a come along and a long strap and go
just do it. Yeah.
On that. Plus with the new dog that we inherited, he is a great friendly
the one that you had that you thought was adopted that you
and now have back.
Okay.
And stuff. He's a great dog. He's very friendly, but he scares the hell out of people. And I can't leave him in the house because he scares the hell out of our little tiny dog about this big and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. Well, we got a couple of things going. I've got a surprise guest for next month, but I'm not going to tell anybody who it is. You'll have to find out. Yeah. we have a really nice surprise guest. I'm going to have kind of a long segment next month, so you don't have to do anything.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that.
We'll come on and we'll record our segments and stuff here, or our joint thing, and we're going to roll right into that segment. It's probably a 45-minute segment, so it'll take up the whole show, but it's a cool guest and I'm looking forward to it. And
Cool.
then we've got a couple of new things that we're going to kick off and start. We are actually working to get somebody in to do a segment on DMR radio. And we are looking to create a DMR group, whatever, for the hamsters and ham talk. But
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook. Yeah.
yeah, now one of the and the other thing too, for April, we are going to do a live show.
Live show.
We're going to do a live show. We're going to allow the first 15 people that email me at n5xo@n5xo.net. The first 15 people that email me after they see this show, we're going to test and see if anybody's watching, can be on the show live with us. So we're going to open it up for 15 people, and they get to join us in the show. So it'll be fun. They can ask questions. They can irritate us. They can talk about Fred. We can all make fun of Sam because she's not here. You know, we got a lot of opportunities there. So that's going to be our April show. So that's kind of what I've got going in the works.
Cool.
Right.
Good.
Well,
In April, I'll be going to the Northeast Weak Signal Group conference up in Connecticut. So a couple days. I really enjoy the VHF, UHF microwave conferences.
yeah, they did
actually
Austin a few years ago. That was, and then we were actually going to host, and then COVID came in. The hamster group was hosting the Central VHF UHF conference for 2022, and COVID came in and kind of backed everything off, and that didn't happen. And we ended up I don't know if they even had it.
I'm confused. Which conference? Central States
The
was
Central States VHF UHF conference.
okay. I know 2020 that was going to be in Wisconsin, and that
Yeah.
was moved to 2021. Then finally they had it in 2022.
Yeah, 2020.
I didn't make that.
Well, this was before COVID hit. This was right as COVID hit. They had asked us to host the event in San Antonio. They had done Austin. When was Austin? 18 or 17, something like that. Trying to think.
Pre-17, because I've been to them all since 18, except
Yeah.
for the one in 2022.
Yeah, they did. The first one that I ever was involved with was in Austin, and I don't remember what year that was. And then I didn't go to the other ones because I wasn't going to drive that far for it and everything. I still think we need to get on another road trip to Dayton this year. You know, we did Huntsville. Now we need to go to the real one.
I'll be at Dayton this year. I'll be exhibiting.
Point down to Melissa and say, Melissa, you need to get in the truck and go. Road trip.
So, and just one correction, Northeast Weak Signal Group is hosting it, and they usually have their own conference, but this one, they're hosting Microwave Update. So it's a combined conference. Microwave Update is a little more oriented for the microwaves. I really enjoyed I think it was one, gosh. There was one at Dayton I was out to, and then I want to say there was another, but that might have been the 2021 that was going to be hosted by the Mount Airy VHF club, but it was going to be hosted by a couple. But anyway, it got pushed off 2020, 2021, and 2022. So they're finally having it now. So I also do know that it's not fully organized, but the Central States VHF Conference this July is going to be in Little Rock.
Well, that's doable.
Yeah, that's not so far away.
Yeah, if I decide we're not doing Dayton, I may go do that one because I'd have much more fun at that one than Dayton. You'll go to Little Rock,
Maybe.
but you won't go to Dayton, Ohio. I mean,
Hot Springs.
huh? Hot Spring. All right, we'll drop you off and pick you up on the way back. All right, well, let's roll over to Andrea's segment.
Yeah, I've got a great segment. This is like part one on grounds, and I will tell you about more grounds than you knew existed. So let's go over to that.
Let's roll that beam footage.
Welcome to part one of my two-part series on grounds. In this part, we're going to review all the grounds you may encounter. The first ground we're going to talk about is the signal ground, and here is its symbol. Signal ground just refers to a common point in the circuitry, the common signal reference, and on electrical diagrams is denoted with this symbol rather than draw lines to all these particular points. So nothing special. This is a ground you will find within equipment. The next ground is chassis ground. This refers to connections to the physical chassis of whatever piece of equipment that is involved here. Often this is for electrical noise decoupling. It can also involve safety. And so you will see this symbol on circuit diagrams. The next one is a little bit more common and more people know, which is the earth ground. This denotes areas that would be connected to safety ground going all the way to your ground rod in your facility or your house. This also is sometimes marked on the chassis of equipment where that chassis would be intended to connect to the safety ground or to the earth ground. Star ground, also known as a single point ground, all the grounds go to a single point, as you can see here. And we've got solid ground. Things seem to be firming up. And then there's coffee grounds. A lot of people feel these are necessary in the morning. I tend to agree, although I drink decaf. I don't need it for the caffeine, but I do enjoy my coffee. Ground loops. These things hang up people all the time. They are best avoided. Safety ground, I mentioned that before. This is a proper safety ground. You see it's got its hard hat there. A little bit overkill, but OSHA rules are OSHA rules. And then brings us to foreground. Yep, there's 4 of them there. The background, this is one you can take portable quite easily. Ground up, I think this one's self-explanatory. Well grounded. Nothing like connecting your ground to a well deep into the ground. Good connection. Yeah. Above ground, which shouldn't be confused with floating ground. nor confused with the high ground. Below ground, this one shouldn't be confused with underground, nor confused with ground under. That actually looks kind of painful. Ground waves. Keeping both feet on the ground is important. Ground rules, just so you know what rules you've got in the ground that you happen to be on. Aground, this one's important if you're into boating. Groundhog, not only are these guys cute, but they can help tell us whether we're going to have an early spring. Common ground. This one used to be very common, but lately it seems to be more difficult to find. So I don't know if it will be continued to be called common ground. We'll just have to see. Ground beef. Good thing that attachment isn't a little farther towards the rear. Otherwise, it might be utter disaster. Ground chuck. Poor chuck. Losing ground. I've had this one happen. Cat just sits on whatever I'm looking for. Stand your ground. Yeah, show it off. Put it on a big pole. Stand it up. Run to ground. Often have to do this in the workplace, but you have to watch out. And it's because sometimes that can lead to you having hit the ground running. Ouch, that hurts. Virtual ground. Yeah, it's not really there. Sometimes you'll encounter objections due to religious grounds. Just a couple examples. Stomping grounds. If you find yourself in this spot, you might flee. It's like Godzilla's coming. And then there's the grounds for divorce. Guys, this one is like playing with fire. Be very careful if you're playing with this ground. Just remember, this can be one of the most expensive grounds around. And finally, we have the playground. Grounds are not things to play with. It's very serious business. Just look at what's happening to Mikey there, launched off that teeter-totter. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed my segment on grounds. Understand all the different grounds that are out there. This is Kilo 2 Echo Zulu, roving reporter and part-time comic relief for Ham Talk.
Bean footage. All right. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, on that. Well, anybody.
And I just want to say, part 2, just I'm not sure when that's going to come out, but just like History of the World Part 1, when did that come out? Like 40 years ago, and they just came out with Part 2. It may be that long, but I promise I will follow.
What you're saying is you're taking after Boston with the group. They came out with their first album, and it took them like 7 years to come out with the second one. And then when they said the song remains the same, they weren't joking.
Oh.
Well, the first album sounded just like the second album.
Yeah.
There was they changed the lyrics, but all the music was the same. It seemed like they had one rhythm, and that was it. All right. Well, I don't think of anything else we've got. Thank you, Raisa, for your segment, Andrea, and Mike. Thank you for sending your pictures to the Ham Shack. That was quite a surprise, and we loved it. Now we got to find somebody else to start begging to send pictures. And Melissa could maybe do this. I don't know, 2 months in a row.
What what was all this that we were going to do this segment about our
The
mistakes?
mistakes. Mm-hmm.
Did you just
Yeah.
forget that, Greg? Did you not
No,
make
you
any
keep.
mistakes?
I was all ready to talk about our mistakes. I still can talk because we got plenty of time on that. God, I don't know where you want to start on mistakes. I've made a lot of them over the years.
Yeah, I think I had made the comment a while back that Greg could do a whole show on his mistakes.
I could. I honestly think the very first mistake was how I got into ham radio. Let's see, it was fourth grade teacher, I think. We were doing in science class, we were learning about Marconi and the start of radio and spark gap and all that, and the first transmissions across the ocean. So me and a idiot neighbor that lived about a block away, we decided, you know what, we could make those. And we had some Boy Scout telegraph keys, and I had Model T spark coils, and we ran we lived in a small town in the middle of Texas called Brownwood, which is all ranching town. And so there's barbed wire fences everywhere. And you know, well, a 5 mile long barbed wire fence, what kind of antenna it makes? We hooked up to those puppies, and it was one rainy Saturday, about 3 days after we had done it. And we would transmit, and our code sucked. We kind of made up our own code. It was like 1 dot for this, 1 dot for 2 dots for that. But we turned around and we hooked up to it, and we found if we just turned the AM radio on, because there wasn't FM yet, you could hear it no matter where you tuned on the dial. Well, us being dumbasses, pardon me, we didn't stop and realize that if we didn't have to tune the radio and it was coming across the whole band, it was everywhere else too. And with our giant long antennas, we were pretty much wiping out all television. Remember when we were kids and your mom turned the mixer on to do Thanksgiving Day and you weren't watching the parade or anything else on television? Well, when we're going boop, 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 it was going. We wiped out all TV, radio, including police channels, and the amateur band. And it was a rainy day, so we're inside. We've been doing this for hours. And about 7 p.m., we hear on our door, and there's a policeman and 2 guys in suits. And they ask for my dad, and my dad's like, yes, may I help you? And they go, we've tracked a signal down here where it's causing massive interference, and there's no TV reception, radio reception, and amateur radio reception. Plus, it's interfering with the police channels. And my dad's like, Greg? So I come walking out, and they confiscated my spark Model T spark induction or ignition coil, and the telegraph key. I don't know what they wanted with an old Boy Scout telegraph key, but they took it. My neon light, I had a neon light so I could visually see when I was doing things. The arcing wasn't enough for me. I had to have the light too. And then they said, and who are you transmitting with? And I said, well, Brian. And they go, where's Brian? And I said, well, he's around the corner down the alley. So then we all drove over there, and they confiscated his as well. And then 2 days later, the guys in suits came back to the house, and they introduced themselves again and told my dad that they were amateur radio operators, and because everybody wore a suit back then, and that they were talking about it at their club meeting, and they decided that with our enthusiasm level, we would be better to join them than not. So they took us and they started teaching us everything we needed to know to pass the novice.
Cool. That's
And
cool.
that was in November. And in October, I got my novice license in 1968. And so that was my first mistake, but it got me into the hobby.
It got you noticed. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of attention. I was well known in Brownwood, Texas. It was actually kind of a good thing when we moved here. I never did anything bad. We also did an AM radio station, and we would ride our bike around and listen to it. It transmitted. I did that with a 101 electronic kit from Radio Shack. We built a transistor radio, and it was supposed to have this long of an antenna. Well, remember that barbed wire fence? So we had a nice AM radio station. It transmitted about 7 miles in the daytime and about 12 at night. And we got a complaint from the neighbor that he wanted to hear a different record, because we would put the record on 45 with the spindle up so it would keep repeating, and we'd drive around seeing how far we could get, and we're broadcasting the same damn record for there. In fact, they said if they heard "I Don't Like Spiders and Snakes" one more time, those were my entry level stupidities. All right, Andrea, it's your turn.
Well, let's see. I did a lot of experimenting with antennas, and what, I had a 3-element Yagi that I had made work pretty good, but I decided to go and make a 2-element Delta loop, and it just worked horrible. And I didn't work out of any specific plans or something. I knew it had to be a full wave loop. But I made a fatal error that I did not realize for darn close to 40 years. So that was back in 1980 when I was first licensed. And I had made the assumption that a full wave loop, the wire for a full wave loop, would be twice as long as the wire for a half wave dipole. A half wave times 2 should be a full wave. But apparently the equations are slightly different, because there's what's called end effect on a dipole. And so the wire ends up coming out shorter. So I was just way off on the wavelengths, and literally did not know that for like 40 years, and had no success for any loop antennas for that same reason. Another one was putting up an antenna. This was before these days of people using drones to get ropes up in the trees, or the little tennis ball shooter kind of thing. And so I had a fishing reel with oh gosh, I saw a picture of like somebody using a slingshot with a fishing reel. My mom had a bow, and I thought, okay, I'll just mount the fishing reel to the bow and use that to shoot the arrow over the tree that I wanted. And it was one of these open face reels where you flip the bail across and you go, and I had it all hooked up, and I go and I pull back and I shoot. But the twang of the bow caused the bail of the fishing reel to snap closed. That arrow went out about 15 feet, turned around, and came right back at me, and went about 6 inches into the ground at my feet.
Let me tell you a bow story of mine. We had in our house in Live Oak when I was a teenager, and we're going to leave it at teenager and stupid. Okay. We had a long, narrow section of attic that went over the back deck and porch and stuff that wasn't part of the main attic because we had cathedral ceilings in our living room and everything. Well, the area, I only weighed 12 pounds when I was 18. I know it's hard to believe now, but I thought, that's a long, hot, miserable climb to the other end. So I got my crossbow and an arrow, tied the jet line to it, and I went on the one side of the attic and I aimed down and shot the arrow. And then I was going to go in the other side of the attic, grab it, pull it through, and then tie the wire on and pull it through. Well, crossbow's got quite a bit of energy.
Yes.
The arrow went through the attic right as planned. I mean, it pulled that cable right with it, just perfect. It hit the end of the wall. Remember the asbestos siding on houses in the 60s? Went through the asbestos siding and traveled and stuck in the neighbor's house.
Oh.
And I got away with it. Nobody ever knew it. I ran out of that attic so fast, down the garage over there, got that arrow, pulled it out of the wall, which was fun, and cut the cable, pulled it back, went over, and nobody ever noticed it. It made a hole. Now on our house, when it went out, it blew the so it made a hole on the inside of the attic about the size of my finger. The hole on the outside was about that big around, and I went and painted a board to match and just glued it up there. But
so, one of my times shooting an arrow, and I still use this today, I solved the problem by putting a little piece of wood to act as a friction on the bail so it wouldn't pop, and that worked okay. And I learned to get some from the hardware store, some nuts to screw on the end, just to add a little extra weight to pull down the fishing line at the other end. But one time I go to shoot up, and I mean, with the line on, I mean, the arrows fly very well with the fishing line, but it still restrains the arrow quite a bit. And I went and did it, and the fishing line broke, like, I don't know, at the release or something. And that arrow just went up and up. And it was like gone. And then I swear about 10 seconds later, it's probably not, maybe only 5 seconds, I hear dang, the prang of the arrow hitting the road. The first thing I was like, oh my God, what's that going to hit? And when it hit the road, I was like, oh, great. It didn't hit like a car. It didn't. And it was down the road. I could not find that arrow on that road. I don't know where it went.
It was inside a car, probably.
As I'm thinking about it, maybe it didn't hit the road that passes in front of my house, but went over. Where I was shooting was towards the one lot, so I thought it was just down that road, but maybe it went across to the next block over. I never found that arrow. I was like, oh well, get some more nuts on another arrow.
One of the things I actually did without, it wasn't a stupid thing that I did, like shooting an arrow through the house or into the street and everything, but I'd gotten it's an HF only radio, Yaesu FT990, the Yaesu, and it had a button on the front that went from a receive antenna only to antenna A. It had an antenna or a receive antenna, and it had a little push button on the front. Well, I pulled the radio out to hook a speaker up to it, pulled it out, plugged the speaker in, slid it back in. Well, when I pulled it out, I kind of tipped it up and down. And so the display was kind of like resting on my chest here. And I slid it back in and I turned it on and I couldn't hear anything. I was getting no reception at all. The speaker was working. I'm getting hiss like mad. Absolutely nothing. I messed with that for 25 minutes when I noticed the damn antenna button. And I go, I wonder. And I go, boop. Sound everywhere. and I'd like to say I was young and dumb, but I was in my 50s at that point. Well, maybe in my 40s.
I saw somebody selling an FT736 on eBay once, and they, it was a really cheap price. They said there's something wrong with this radio. It's always stuck in transmit. And when you looked at it, you saw the MOX button for the manual transmit pushed in on the front panel. Somebody jumped on that purchase real quick.
Oh yeah.
Then again, maybe because it was truly stuck, they pushed that button. But oh gosh,
the 736 is a great radio. It's one of my favorite. I'd jump on one all over the place. Dumbest thing I ever did was sell the two I had and all the modules.
I've got two of them.
Yeah,
one's in Rover, one's here, and I've got another radio to put in too. So, but Rover's not here right now. I did have to replace the memory battery on my 736 in Rover, which I did over the Christmas holiday, as well as replace the elements on the Yagi, because one half the reflector fell off somewhere driving up to New Jersey in November. And so it wasn't a big deal replacing the battery. Almost had a run in because with a low hanging cable while I was up there. Fortunately, I spotted it and just missed it. But I can talk about the time that, and it's hard to call this one a mistake, but I did turn onto a road once, and all suddenly I was just starting to accelerate and I hear this screaming sound. A cable had gotten caught in the Yagi on Rover, and it was a cable TV cable. It yanked it off the house on one side or something. It was hanging too low. It needs to be above 14 feet, and it was below 12 feet. Knocked the Yagi kind of off kilter, pointing up a little bit. I had to fix the mount on there, but fortunately it didn't bend the mast. The mast would have been really hard to do something with, but that was one of my strength tests for the mast and thrust bearing.
Yeah, we had a local guy here that taught all of us not to use the Vox, because he always had the Vox on and he would just carry on conversations, because you could hear him typing away. He'd be doing 9 things while he's carrying on a conversation with you. So he always used Vox. Well, he forgot to turn it off one day, and his girlfriend came to visit. We'll just leave the rest to your imagination. We had an X-rated amateur radio show for about an hour. It was kind of interesting. And then the next day, several people couldn't let him just get away with he didn't realize he'd done it. And they had to add comments. Well, you know what? We have told all the dumb things you and I have done, but we hadn't heard from Melissa. And I know she's had her license long enough to do at least one dumb thing.
Well, I may have had my license for quite a while, but I haven't been that active. So, but the one mistake that comes to my mind is one of the first times I was on the radio, and I reverted back to my my employment, and I actually said 10-4.
Oh man, that's an
I
unforgivable
was like,
sin.
ow.
We need to have you horsewhip for that one. All right, well, guys, I think it's time for us to wrap up. We'll see everybody next month. Remember, we got a special guest next month, which is going to be a secret all the way up until the show starts. And then the month after that, surprise. What the hell? This is the first 15. So we'll see what that goes. So with that, I go back into my Samantha mode with the hamsters. Thank you very much. We couldn't do it without you. Andrea, any final words?
Nothing else here I can think of, unless you want to know about that lawnmower blade I put on upside down once, but
That's not a ham radio one. But
yeah,
we'll find out about that one sometime. Melissa,
anyway,
any final thoughts?
We'll see you next month.
All right. Greg, any final thoughts? Why, no, I don't have any. Thank you very much, Sam. Okay, everybody, good night, 73. This is November 5 X-Ray Oscar for Ham Talk. Good night.